Hi, this is Mick Garris for Troma TV. I started as a writer. It's easier, I think, to do that because you don't have to worry about financial issues. In my case, I started writing at the age of 12 and started screenwriting later on, obviously, and probably wrote a dozen scripts before I actually got read by people who mattered. And eventually Steven Spielberg and company gave me my first opportunity writing for Amazing Stories. So that gave me an opportunity to write. They hired me as the story editor. I went from food stamps to story editor on Amazing Stories, and this was 1985. And in the second season, he gave me an opportunity to direct. The big differences in directing between feature films and television is financial. Creatively, I don't think there's a difference because most people see even the biggest feature films at home on their home theaters or on television, on DVD or whatever. So why should there be a technical difference in the making of? So creatively, I don't shoot tighter for television. I don't shoot more close-ups for television. I think we have a sophisticated audience that's used to watching feature films on their televisions. And so I treat them pretty much the same. Just like I don't treat horror any different than I do from drama. It's all Shakespeare to me. My job producing on Masters of Horror was to encourage every filmmaker to bring his own skills into play in the way that best reflects his filmmaking personality. So working with a guy like Stuart Gordon versus working with a guy like Dario Argento or John Landis or John Carpenter, each of them has their own film vocabulary. Each of them has their own approach to filmmaking. All of them had come from low-budget independent roots. And so all of them were able to say, okay, you only have 10 days to shoot. Creatively, you're on your own. Producing with each of them, in my case, was acting as a cheerleader and just encouraging them to be themselves and to not try and make a television show, but to make a movie that reflects who they were. And so it was kind of the dream gig of all times as a producer. Well, I think the main lesson as a producer or as a director is to believe in what you're doing. But you have to realize that if you are going to take a stand, you might lose. I gave up a big bunch of money that I didn't replace with anything else by not going back to Fear itself because I just didn't feel it could be the show that I intended it to be when I created it. And, I don't really consider myself a producer that much, even though I've done a lot of it. Before Masters of Horror and Fear itself, my producing had only been on things that I'd directed myself. And maybe I had written the script, maybe I'd created the project or brought a project together with a production company or studio or network or whatever. In the case of Masters of Horror, that was my baby. And I'm very proud of the first 2 years of my baby, but it was adopted and abused in its third year. And, I didn't want to be a part of that. And I understand why it had to change, but I didn't feel that I needed to be involved in that. Now, that's easy for me to say because I've got my house, it's paid for, and I can afford to skip several months or even a year of the income of that. But if it were my first show, I'd eat shit. I would take it because, I remember when I was beginning as a screenwriter, I would have made any changes anybody wanted because they were paying me to do it. And it was an honor and a thrill to be able to work in the film industry. Well, it still is. And I love the opportunity to be able to do what so many people only wish they could do. But I'm at the point now where I don't have to eat shit every time out. I still got to chew on a turd or two, but I don't have to take something I created, see it go bad, and stay a part of it. You know, for me, a good producer is somebody who doesn't just say no, but says, well, we can't do that, but how about if we do this? Someone who is my partner and not my teacher. You know, a good producer is a guy who helps you, who helps you find a way to do what you need. You know, maybe you can't have a crane every day or a Steadicam every day or something, but he'll come up with a way to help you do it. With every show I've ever done with a producer I admire, it's because he's as committed to it as I am, and we all share the same vision and enthusiasm and excitement, and we all feel like we're doing something really special every time out. In the case of Masters of Horror, what I tried to be as producer of that show was a guy who protected the director's individual visions, helped them make their days, was a resource anytime they needed it, a guy they could talk to without worrying about, you know, politics or upsetting the apple cart, someone that could be a confidant and someone who could be there as a cheerleader and with encouragement. Whenever I've had a bad experience with a producer, it's because they just want to save money, or they just want to pull the plug, or they just want to swing their dicks and show you how powerful they are. You know, it's something that, you know, a good producer is a producer who loves movies, who loves what he's doing and helps you do it. A bad producer is a guy who wants to get chicks, a guy who just wants to make money, who has no respect for the movie you're making, but just sees it as a quick way. Oh, a horror movie. Let's make a piece of shit horror movie because that's going to make money. I love every horror movie I've ever done, which is a good thing because it's almost all I've ever done. But you know, a bad producer is a guy who's counting pennies rather than helping you figure out how to save the money. You know, finding a way to collapse a couple of scenes into one location because you're there for a day and then you're out. You know, just a guy who has a sense of creativity. Not all producers are creative producers, and that's fine. But they should not be your enemy. They should be your partner. I think one of the big stumbling block for homemade movies is not the technical end of things. I think one of the reasons actors make so much money is because they put people in seats. And when you're using your best friends and you're using, you know, local actors, maybe you can get them from theater and the like, it's the biggest stumbling block. Because if you're telling a story and the performances aren't believable and aren't rich and aren't deep and aren't interesting, you know, that is going to torpedo all the hard work you put into your lighting and your camera movement and your script and all of those things. So that's the thing I've come to realize, that in most short films is what puts up a wall between me and enjoying it. Is, you know, so many of the performances are of an amateur level. You know, you can tell a story well, it's so important to get a good performance, because that's what is going to touch people. You'll impress people with technique and style and photography and sets, but that goes away and styles change. Whereas if you connect with people on a human and emotional level, that's going to stick with them. An agent makes a difference. You know, you have been able to raise the funding. You've produced your films. You know, you have a history of your own company making movies. I think for a filmmaker, a writer, a director to be taken seriously on the studio level or even on the independent level, they want to know that there's representation behind that person. So that's the first step in getting somebody to believe in you. You know, an agent or a manager who is someone who will work for you, because you're not going to go to Paramount and have them open a door for you if you're unrepresented. But the agents have relationships with the people who buy the scripts, who hire the directors, who hire the actors, all those things. So an agent is really important. It's also really hard to get a good agent, and if you do, get a good agent who will work for you. You know, if you have an agent like I do who represents Steven Spielberg and Robin Williams, there's not a whole lot of time for me. So, you know, it's really important that you have an agent that believes in you and will spend some time with you and maybe give you some guidance. You know, I hate being told that I've written a script where they say, you know, it'd be much more commercial if the actor and the actress got together at the end of this and that. But if it means another foot in the door, you know, be willing to make those changes. You know, don't make, most people are going to recommend that you change something to make it more familiar rather than to make it better. And be open to good ideas, but also stand up for your creativity and what you believe in, what you write, what you make. You know, just know when an idea is better than yours. Well, the best advice, I think, for anyone who wants to make movies is to learn movies. Learn everything you can about movies. Find out what the good movies are, not just the good movies in the 2000s, but good movies in the 1930s, 1940s, 1960s, you know, all the way up to now. And get a good working knowledge of what makes them good, and to be aware of performance. You know, I can't stress too much that a movie is about human beings. And the human beings are what people embrace in the story that you're telling. Yeah, it's going to be great if you can make a twist that nobody's done before or nobody guesses is coming. That's a really great thing as a writer, and sell a script that has all of those elements. That's great. But you need people to interpret that script, and they are the center of the story you're telling. And so just the crucial aspect is tell a story about human beings that people can relate to, and have human beings that people can relate to tell that story for you.